Hi y'all! Welcome back to my art channel. My name is Rachel Byers and today we will be doing a painting tutorial on this lovely pumpkin painting. So I will be calling out the brushes I'm using, the paints I'm using, and kind of working through the different techniques. I hope you enjoy this, whether you're just watching along or whether you're actually painting with me. If you are painting with me, I would love for you to tag me in a photo, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram, of your finished piece. If not, that's cool as well. I just would love to see how they all turn out. I hope you have fun, and at the very least, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. Thanks for joining. Here I have an 8x10 canvas. You can choose to use whatever size canvas that you would like and whatever orientation. I'm doing mine in vertical. If you want to do it horizontal, you can certainly do it that as well. You just want to be mindful of your space around. You don't want to fill up too much of the canvas with your pumpkins. You want to have a little bit of the background still showing. And for my background, I really wanted to have kind of like a whitewashed wood style texture. So I am using a combination of Naples yellow, a Parchment, which is kind of like a creamy white, Raw Umber, and Raw Sienna. And then I'm not overloading my brush. I'm just kind of lightly pulling my flat, large brush across the canvas, but not really trying to blend in those colors. I'm gradually adding in the different shades of this tan and brown to create more depth for that whitewashed wood effect. But once again, the goal isn't to overload the canvas with paint. We do want this to actually go on fairly lightly so that the drying process to start our next phase isn't that long. Here I'm using a medium fan brush to help create that wood effect. You don't have to use a fan brush. You could also use a fine liner. This just works a lot faster. You don't want to overload your brush. You want to kind of keep it dry brushing technique so that you can slowly pull that paint from the top of the canvas down. And then just keeping in mind that your ground that you're going to have your pumpkins on is going to be about 1/3 of the way up from the bottom. So you don't really need to focus so much on the bottom portion of your background until you get to the floor. And then once you've begun the floor, it's essentially the same techniques. I'm using the same set of paints. I'm just using the darker spectrum of those colors. And then I'm moving horizontally instead of vertically. So instead of up and down, I'm moving from side to side, just so that way it creates a different level. So, and same with the floor as with your wall, we'll call it. You want to make sure that you're not overloading your brush and that you're trying to, keep it more of a dry brushing technique where you're still getting those nice wood style marks, but not too much paint on your canvas, just because if you do add too much paint to the canvas, it could potentially prolong our next step by having to wait for this paint to dry. Just because if this paint is still wet when you move on to the next step, you may notice some color bleed through on the pumpkins, which is what you can see here as I begin laying out my turquoise pumpkin. Parts of the white and some of the raw umber from the background start mixing into the color, which is not what you want. You want them separate, but hey, as impatient, I'm human. So worked in that turquoise pumpkin, and then I begin adding in my orange pumpkin. I was trying to keep both of these pretty light-handed when it came to the back color, just because I did want them to also dry. I just wanted to kind of have my thoughts in place of where I wanted that placement. I knew that I wanted it a little bit from the top and then not fully touching both edges, just so that the eye really works throughout the whole painting. You have something that's drawing your eyes around instead of just on one pumpkin to the next and then drawing your eyes off the edge of the canvas. So as I let my pumpkins dry, I'm just adding in a little bit of black and of that raw umber just to create a little bit more depth. I will be adding 2 extra pumpkins in front of my orange and turquoise pumpkin, but wanted the color variety to be a little bit greater than what it was currently. I kind of felt like what I had started out with was pretty muted, so I just wanted a little bit more contrast. Now we'll begin working back on that turquoise pumpkin. I've mixed a little white with the bright aqua teal and a little bit of the cobalt teal to create the top of the pumpkin, the very light shades that I want as the section of light or imaginary light I'm having come from the top. So the top of our pumpkins will be a lot brighter than the bottom. And then I'm gradually trying to work up the sides of the pumpkin and create those funky little shapes. Now, I don't suggest your pumpkin being perfectly oval shapes or perfectly circular. A lot of pumpkins, I think the great things about them are their perfect imperfections. So they're not all the same width. They don't all have like the same size little veins along the side. So if you feel like you've messed up, just roll with it. Keep working on those little veins and keep perfecting your little pumpkin. So here I'm doing the same thing on the orange. I used some of the yellow and a little bit of the orange to create that top side. Once again, the light coming from the top, and then have worked that vivid red orange more into the base of the pumpkin where I'm going to have more of the shadows. After I've blocked out those shadows and highlights or the base levels of those, I've actually mixed a little bit of that cadmium orange in with that cobalt teal just to try and pull the colors across so they're not so starkly separate. And then same vice versa for the orange pumpkin. I added in a little bit of the cobalt teal into the cadmium orange and added that into my shadow section. So, and then here you see that I've added those two adorable little pumpkins as well. One I did in Naples yellow and the other one in white. And then I'm just adding some of that N6 neutral gray into the base to work on those shadow sections. After the mini pumpkins are laid in, I'll let those dry a bit and begin working on the shadow sections of my pumpkins, beginning with the orange pumpkin. So here I'm adding in some of that raw umber and actually a little bit of black to try and really make those shadows a little bit more extreme. And then I'm doing the same for the turquoise pumpkin as well, but instead of starting with black, I'm wanting to have that pumpkin be a little bit lighter on the top. Just because the turquoise is such a lighter color all around. So I'm just adding in some of the N6 neutral gray, and then eventually I'll begin adding in some of the N3 neutral gray as well, just so that way the darkness from that black isn't so overwhelming. I feel like the orange can hold up to that darker color a little bit easier than that turquoise. And then once I've added in those darker shadow sections, I begin working on the smaller pumpkins. So we're just kind of moving throughout the pumpkins, allowing each layer that we add to kind of dry by the time that we come back around to it. So as you see here, I'm starting to add in a little bit more of the black and the dark gray onto that orange pumpkin, since my last set of shadows has had a chance to kind of dry and not be so easily malleable to the color of paint that I'm adding in. So it just allows you to create another layer. And then when you're creating your little vines off the top, I would suggest having those go in opposite directions or be shaped slightly different, just because no two pumpkins are exactly the same. So I think that adds some of a realistic characteristic about them. And then you'll also want to have the same concept of adding in some lights and darks into those eventually as well, just so that you have those gradient scale of colors. So at this point in the painting, I like where my shadows are at, so I'm just adding in some black for some greater contrast on those super dark sections, and then also making sure to add my little vines on the top of my adorable little pumpkins in the front, and then just trying to fine tune some of my edges. So like on the turquoise pumpkin, I decided that I wanted to add some more of the cobalt teal without having any white or gray mixed into it, just for a little bit more of a punch of color. And then I did similarly on the orange pumpkin. I added in a little bit more of the yellow and then a little bit more of that cadmium orange undiluted, just to add some more, you know, really vibrant undiluted color on there that's really saturated. And then I added in the cute little wispy vines, which was also super fun. You can choose to do this or choose to not do it. I chose to not do it on my little adorable pumpkins and just left that detail on my big ones. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more weekly art videos, please click subscribe. If you have suggestions or comments or any sort of feedback or requests for other painting tutorials, please leave a comment below and I will try my best to accommodate all requests. Otherwise, have a fabulous day and see you next week.